All right. Well, is it noon or
It's
noon my time, which is 2 p.m. Eastern somewhere?
yeah, it's 2 o'clock. We are recording this, right?
Yeah. As soon as I start
Oh,
recording.
okay. And the people who are live, they get the good stuff, right? We're holding something specifically for them. Anyone who's going to watch this recorded is missing out on something.
We'll make sure they miss out on something. Yeah. Yeah. Stick around to the end. And then what we'll do is, well, I don't know. Did we figure that out? Are we going to tell them at the end? No, we're not going to tell them at the end. We're going to email. We'll email them. Everyone who's here live, we're going to email you something at the end to give you guys a special bonus to thank
Yeah,
you for showing up live.
yeah. Um, what's nice this time is that I don't really have to introduce you. People know who you are. I feel like more people may know you in this thread than know me. So really all we have to do is talk about, give a quick overview. I'll give a quick overview of what we're talking about today and why it's so important. Um, the pricing for profits that we did in November, December, whenever that was, none of that stuff that we talked about 2 months ago even matters if we don't get this right. And I think that's why I'm so excited to discuss qualifying and what the process should be when clients call in or clients reach out, because I think it's something that probably half of us get wrong, or there's room for improvement for everybody. So we're going to discuss why qualifying is so important. Who is answering the phone? Who is answering the phone? This is huge, people. Ryan has a 6-step framework for qualifying, and then we have some other important things to remember. So what's on our next page here, pal?
Hey, you know what? I hate to rewind too much, but I did want to give everyone kind of an introduction to what we're planning on doing this year. And I'll just take like 30 seconds to do that. So we did that webinar a couple months ago. I think it was in November or something like that. And we called it Pricing for Profits. And we had really good feedback from it and everything else. So Ryan and I have decided that every month, it's going to be the second Wednesday of every month this year, we're going to do this webinar series. Okay. And we're calling it Lighting for Profits because we're going to just be talking about, we're trying to help grow the lighting industry, right? Help grow your business. And I'm huge on profits. Ryan's big on profits. Like, and the reason why that's so important for me is when I was starting and growing my business, there was a time where it was just really, really difficult to do anything. I couldn't make decisions to hire people. I just felt stuck, and it came down to, I wasn't making enough money, and growing up, I was almost raised to believe money was like the root of all evil. I mean, it says it in the Bible, like it was almost like a bad thing. And so I felt almost guilty for charging more money and all these other things. But I realized if you want to be a business owner, you have to make money. You have to be profitable. If you want to give back to your employees, if you want to have a good culture, if you want to have a better service, a better company to your client base, you have to make a lot of money. And so we're really making I guess the theme of each webinar will be different. Like today, we're talking about qualifying. Next month, we're going to talk about technology, but we're always going to tie it back to profits and how it can give more profitability to your business. So we're super excited to do this. And hopefully you guys will join us on this journey. Just put it in your calendar because it's going to be every second Wednesday of the month, I guess, until it's not the second Wednesday, until like we're like, oh crap, I can't do it on that Wednesday. But I think we're locked in, right? So we're doing
Oh
this.
yeah, we're locked in. We're excited, and we already have. I think we have about 20 different topics that we came up with, all tying back to things that the contractor can do to boost profits. But if anyone has any recommendations or wants to reach out to us and say, hey, I'd love to discuss this. I'd love for you guys to talk about this. We're always available. So reach out. We'd love to hear your feedback on that too.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. And by the way, guys, if you have questions, comments, whatever it is, go ahead and type them in. Let me make sure I got these boxes open. There's either a chat box or a Q&A. Just type them in. Even if, we don't answer it right away, we'll do a Q&A at the end, but you don't have to wait until the end. So if you have a question right now and you're like, oh crap, I really want to ask these guys, then write it down. Otherwise you'll forget. And at the end, we won't have anyone asking any questions. So go ahead and just type it in now, type it whenever it comes up. and then we will have a Q&A at the end. So does that sound good? Let me know if you guys are ready to go in the comments.
They're ready.
They're
They're
ready.
just waiting for us to stop. Just go.
Okay. So let's start with the first one. So we're going to really break down why qualifying is so important. And honestly, when I hear the word qualifying, I'm like, okay, this is boring. Like I'm surprised you guys even showed up to the webinar because the title is just so lame, you know.
I
But it's
tried to do better. Try to come up with something better, but it's qualifying. Just hammers at home.
I know but it just sounds like, maybe we should be talking about sales or marketing or, you feel like it's just not that important. And I think that's why it is so important is because most people overlook it. So let's talk about why it's so important and what things we can do to make it more relevant in your business. So I want to just share this experience. When I started out, and maybe you guys are like this, we're all at different phases of our business. But when I started out, I remember when the phone would ring, I would get so happy that I didn't care who they were, where they lived, what they said. I just got their name, their address, and I just showed up. And I was so excited and I would spend as much time as I could with them. It didn't really matter. And I found myself being pretty busy, which, felt good. But then at the end of the week, end of the month, and I didn't have that many cells. I found myself following up with people and them going, well, let me think about it some more. And just there wasn't a lot of progression. And so I realized early on that I needed to come up with a different solution. And that solution was pre qualifying. And so you may be in a position where leads are slow because of COVID or whatever it is. And you might be the same way. It's like, man, I'm just excited to go on an appointment. But honestly, if you want to grow your business, if you want to be profitable, you have to introduce some type of pre qualification process and system and script into your business. Otherwise, you're just going to be you'll be busy, but it's just busy work instead of effective work.
And 100%. You're not alone in that. That all of us. I mean, even on the distribution end, like we get excited when we first start. We get really excited when that phone rings, and it's just how quickly can I meet you? How quickly can I get over there and give you all of this information, give you all of my knowledge, and slam it down your throat? When we realize now that we have to step back and start this whole pre-qualifying process so we can be efficient with our time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
honestly,
see a comment. I see a comment from Paul, which is cracking me up. I used to answer my phone 24/7. 100%. I mean, hey, can I give you my cell phone? Here's my pager number. Here, take it. Call me whenever you want.
exactly. I remember, and this wasn't too long ago. This was only like 6, 7 years ago. I had a guy call me, and it was like Friday night. I've got kids, so my Friday nights are, Friday nights. And he called me at like 7 o'clock, and he's like, can you do a demo? I went to his house like 30 minutes later. He only lived like 20 minutes away from me. And I thought, oh man, I am such a good guy. I'm the business owner. I am just showing this guy that I'm going to do this. And I just wasted like 3 hours of my time doing a demo with this guy. He never bought. It was a really terrible experience, but a great learning experience to be
Yeah,
like, okay, that's the wrong mentality. You don't have to be the guy that does everything and just do what everyone wants. In fact, it's the flawed strategy. You want to make sure, and that's the next point on there, you want to make sure you're meeting with buyers, not lookers, because I used to think, oh, if you're doing a demo, they must be serious. But there's a lot of people out there that they got nothing to do. And they love to have you over and talk and have a glass of wine and look at some lights. And that was a great night for them. It was just a great night. And you provided this great experience for free. And they were never going to buy. Okay. So you've got to make sure that you are pre-qualifying. Otherwise, you're just wasting time.
yeah, 100%. 100%. Well said. Also, I really like this next line. How much time, money was spent into generating that phone call? That's something that you brought up during our initial conversation here that I never even thought of. And why this qualification process, why getting it right is so important.
Yeah, so there's two pieces to this. There's companies that just are word of mouth. They don't do a lot of advertising and ad spend and stuff like that. So the trap here is you think, well, I'm not spending on money on advertising, but in reality, you're spending a lot of time, which if you've calculated your time, it should be worth a lot. Building relationships, building your business, doing a good job on the installs and all these other things. And so you spent a lot of time building your brand. And if someone was like, hey, you got to call this guy, this guy's great, call him, they're going to take care of you. And then all of a sudden you don't answer your phone, or you don't answer the phone how you should, or you don't return their call. And there's all this process that we're going to talk about in this webinar today. If you're not doing these things right, you just spoiled a great opportunity that you spent years building. And it's hard to track that number if you're not doing ad spend. But if you are doing ad spend, it's pretty easy. I mean, if you're spending
Mhm.
50 grand a year in advertising, you can divide that by the number of leads you get. And okay, every time this phone rings, it costs me $100. Like, that's a pretty significant number.
Yeah.
Maybe it's $20, whatever the number is, it's still costing you money to get that phone call. And so you need to make sure you're putting a ton of energy and a ton of effort into this initial phone call.
Yeah. Into this process. Are we ready to dive into this process?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about this? Who's answering the phone?
Ooh. You made some good notes here. All right. Every phone call needs to be answered within 2 rings. Dead on. And I hammer that home with my guys, and I still don't feel like that gets done anywhere near the way that it should, because they get off doing other things. And I know it's an area that we need to improve on, which is why the ideal way to go about this is to have a full-time receptionist or office manager.
Hey, let me
Um,
ask something real quick before you go. If you guys put in the comments, I'm interested. Who here who here answers their own phone, and who here has someone else answering the phone? Just type that in, and then maybe also put, if you think that you answer your phone every single time, and I'm talking business hours, not at 10 o'clock at night, but within business hours, are you or someone able to answer your phone within 2 rings? And then, sorry, Ryan, to cut you off, but I'm just interested to see kind of what most people are doing.
yeah, me too. Me too. I bet it's probably 75-25 answering their own phones. And anyone who's answering their own phones, here's what we know. Anyone who's answering their own phones, you're not answering the calls. Like you're not answering the calls because you're busy. We understand, and I don't know if you get back to this in the other slides, but the business owner, most of the people on here are business owners. So the business owner should not be the one answering the phones because you're busy doing other things. So we talked about, I mentioned the full-time receptionist office manager is ideal. I think most of you know that there are answering services out there too that will answer the phone. I have mixed feelings about the answering service because it seems like every time I call a client of ours. I know if the answering service is picking up. Like I know it's an answering service, but that still doesn't mean they cannot get basic questions and have a basic script. For me, it's different. If I'm calling somebody, I'm calling as a vendor, I'm returning their call. It's a little different than a homeowner calling in and looking for a new lighting system or looking for service. But I do know every time when I'm getting an answering service versus somebody who's actually in-house answering the phones. But whether you're doing the answering service, which is we know much less expensive than hiring a full-time assistant or office manager, it can't be you. It can't be the owner of the company. Got to get somebody else doing it. Ryan, I know you've got some stories about how you got started and what you found when you finally realized that you needed the office manager. If you want to get into that.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick. So, I'm kind of reading everyone's responses here. It's mixed. Like, some people answer their own phone. Some people know they don't answer it within 2 rings. Some people say 4 rings. Some people have an office staff, which is awesome. Sometimes some people, it's like their husband's out working, she's answering the phones, and so it's a little bit mixed. But I remember when I started, and I thought, well, I'm not busy enough to afford to hire someone full time. Which you guys have probably been there too, and so I'll just answer it. And it was fine at first. I would answer my own phone. But then as we grew, it was like, okay, now we're starting to get some service calls, but our install guys are too busy because our sales are doing good, which is great. But so now I've got a maintenance route. And like every day I'd go to like my 7 or 8 stops. This was back in the halogen days, and just changing out MR16s, whatever. And so, if you asked me then, do you answer the phone every time within 2 rings? I would tell you yes. And that would probably be a lie, because not every time. Okay. The majority of the time it was, but if I'm up in a tree I'm not answering the phone. If I'm in a sales appointment, I don't answer the phone. In fact, it drives me crazy if someone's at my house trying to sell me something or give me a bid, whatever, and they're like, "Hey, hold on one sec. Hey, this is Tommy," and then they're like taking a sales call. I'm like, "What the hell?" Like that's completely unprofessional. So I would not take that call. Then I would go out to my truck, I would return the phone call, and this happened more than once where I had people would tell me, "Oh, hey, yeah, thanks for getting back to us. We actually got a hold of another company." I'm like, "Okay. So when can we come out and meet?" "Well, no, we already got a hold of the other company, so we're good." I'm like, "What? You don't want me to come out?" "No, no, we're good." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So I
That could be
potentially
30 seconds. They can have a list of three companies. The first one answering the phone is the first one that's going to get the chance. It's as simple as that.
absolutely. So if you do the math on that and figure, okay, if that was just a $5,000 opportunity that I lost, I mean, how many of those do you have to lose to be able to justify hiring at minimum an answering service? And even better, have an office manager that's not, by the way, just answering the phone that can then assist you with other things. And they're more than
Yeah,
justified in whatever you're going to pay them. So
yeah,
for me, that's what it was, the turning point. I had several missed opportunities and I thought, and I used to think I can't afford someone, and my I had a mind shift that was like, okay, I can't afford not to have someone.
yeah.
And so that was my big epiphany. And I hired someone and I thought, okay, geez, 30 grand, that's coming straight out of my pocket. But really, it didn't happen at all. It was the thing that led us to that next stage of growth. It was 30 grand investment instead of 30 grand expense.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. So to finish up on this screen, we talk about basic script for the answering service because the answering service probably is not going to be able to do a good job of diving into penetrating questions, which you're going to be asking during the actual qualification. But it is so important for them to set in a time for whoever is answering the phone to set a time for a callback and not leave it vague. Okay, jot this down, people. Make sure whoever's answering your phone is setting an appointment time for you or your designer or whoever to call back. Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, when is a good time for us to call you back? Our designer is typically back in the office from 4 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon. Does that time work for you? So that they're expecting a call back and they don't have to call those other companies, not knowing if they're actually going to hear back or when they're going to hear back.
Yep. I love that point because that's so huge. And I think even if people have an answering service, they think, well, I'm good. Like I don't need to attend the qualifying for profits webinar. I have an answering service. But if they don't have the proper script and they don't have the proper process, is you're setting the right expectation for the client. So they're like, okay, they're off the hook. They don't have to keep calling and trying to find a lighting company. And then you're also holding yourself accountable that, okay, every day at 4 o'clock, I've got to call people back. So that's just in your schedule and it's part of your process. So I
Yeah,
I, I love that point.
yeah. What do we got next?
Okay, now we got the 6-step framework for qualifying, and I put this together to really kind of break it apart so that we can go step by step to make sure that you're hitting on all the elements. And why I love frameworks is because it makes sure you don't miss anything. So a lot of times we are like, if you're like me, I mean, dude, I'm the king of just winging it. And as I grow personally and then as I grow in my business, I've learned that winging it is good, but having step by step processes is better. Okay. And so it just ensures that everything's getting done properly. And let's say you take this framework right here and you're like, well, I really like, everything they say, but I don't like doing the company flex. Well, that's fine, but then I can't promise that you're going to get good results. Like there's a reason why everything's in here. Or you're like, that's fine, but I don't really like the intro. Like you can skip something, but there's a reason why everything's here. So do me a favor. If you're not doing one of these things, just start implementing it today and try it. And then if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. But just always try something new. And it's going to, even if it goes against your grain of how you do things, or you're like, I'm not sure, you're hesitant, just try it. I mean, the worst case is it won't work. And then you can go back to your ways. But let's break it down these steps one step at a time.
Yeah, yeah. You've built a nice process here. I'm excited to get into it.
Okay. So the intro, this almost sounds elementary. Like, why do we really need to talk about this? But honestly, we do, because I can't tell you how many times I personally have called businesses where they don't answer the phone very professional at all. In fact, they're like, hello? I'm like, who am I calling? Did I just call ABC Lighting, or did I just like, who is this? Did I call the wrong number? You can't say hello. You can't even just say like, hey, this is Ryan. Like, that's fine if you've already had a conversation and people know that they're calling you. But you got to remember, they looked you up on Google and they're calling ABC Lighting, or, whatever your lighting is. So they're expecting to hear something. And why not start with thank you? Like, that's really cool when you start with thanking them for calling you, because it's very non-confrontational, anything like that. It's not salesy. But the intro, it sounds, like I said, it sounds lame, but you need to have an intro. So thank you for calling ABC Company. This is Ryan. How may I help you? And it's
You know,
not
the
very
first time
complicated.
the first time I actually heard something like this, I was calling like Tire Kingdom. Um, or the first time I thought about the intro was when I was setting an appointment at Tire Kingdom. And the person answered the phone, thanks for calling. This is Bill. How may I earn your business today? And I remember thinking, I've never heard anyone answer the phone like that. This is cool. And this is somebody who actually wants my business. So we have to answer the phone like we want to receive their call, like we want their business, not like they are bugging us.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna lie, there are times when I pick up the phone where I'm like, where it's my tone coming up, they sound like someone is bugging us. But we understand that without our clients, without our contractors, they are number one. Without the homeowners, without the customer, nothing else we're talking about matters. So we have to make sure that they understand that we want and we value their business at all times. And this is the perfect way to just get that message across right up front. We value you. Thank you for calling. How may we help?
And honestly, this is the first impression. I mean, you could say the first impression is your website or something like that, but this is the first uh, area where they actually talk to a human. You know what I mean? So if you don't have a good voice, then get someone else to answer your calls, whatever. But honestly, just the other day, I had some transmission issues with my truck. I call the closest dealership because it's under warranty. I hate taking stuff to dealers, but if it's under warranty, then it's under warranty. So call there. The lady, honestly, she was terrible. I'm like, how did they have this lady answering the phone? She was obviously having a bad day or something. She was bugged. She was like annoyed that I was even calling. So I called another dealership. I had to drive an extra 6 or 7 miles, way more friendly. They got me in sooner. I mean, it was just an easier process. And it honestly had to do with just that one person answering the phone call. This new dealership, they might have worse service. They might be terrible at what they do. They might charge more. I don't know. I just know that I literally picked it based on that initial conversation. So that's how important this is.
Yeah, that's huge. It sets the tone for everything else that happens.
Yep. Okay. Next, after you do your introduction, then you need to gather information. Again, some of this stuff you're going to be like, well, yeah, of course I'm going to get their name and address, whatever. But there's a couple things you want to make sure you get. There's been times where before I had a process, even when I had a process, I had people in place. I'd be like, oh, what's their phone number? Oh, I didn't get it. Like, why didn't you get the phone number? I can't go at that time, or I got to reschedule, or something came up. It's important to have the name, the address, the phone, the email, and the source, and verify this information. Now, of course, you need to know their address and phone, but you want their email so that you can then engage with them. Whether or not they do business with you, they may decide later on, oh, it's too much money. We need to save. Okay. And we're going to do the project. We're going to push it off for 6 months. Well, you might want to stay engaged with them via an email campaign so that later on the landscaper doesn't show up and be like, oh, yeah, we do lighting too. And they're like, oh, yeah, let's just have him do it. But if you've built a relationship with them over time, so important to get their email. And then also very, very important is to get the source. So the reason why this is important is because if they're just like, oh, we saw you on Google, okay, that's one source, or we referred by our neighbors. Okay, who's your neighbor? And then you can do some research and be like, oh wow, their neighbor spent 20 grand with us, or oh look, the neighbor was a jerk and they were a pain to deal with. They only spent 2,500. I mean, you can use some of this information to help you in your sales process.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a lot of us don't get that source. And then the email is key, not just for the drip campaigns afterward, but we'll talk about later on how you can get them excited even before your visit, for your consultation. So the email is doubly important for sure. Don't be
Absolutely.
afraid to ask. Don't think that this is intrusive. Get asking for an email address, asking for a source. There's nothing intrusive about it. If someone's like, "Why do you need my email address?" Well, you can say, "Well, because we're going to confirm our schedule. We're going to confirm our appointment that way."
Absolutely. And you'll have people saying that's a good point. They'll be like, I don't want to give my email. Oh, well, we're just going to send out an appointment confirmation email. Is that okay if we just do that? So,
Yep.
and then on the source, like I said, you'll find that you'll get them talking and they'll be like, they'll give you valuable information that you can then use. And it actually leads me to bring up the point, whoever is taking this call and taking these notes, make sure that they're taking detailed notes and information so that they can give that information to you or whoever's going to do the sell. So that one, you don't have to ask all the same information, but
Hmm.
two, you've got all this valuable information about how you're going to run your sales appointment based on this information that's been gathered.
Yep. Putting bullets in the chamber. That's what you're doing.
Right. So after you've gathered the information, then there's a few key questions that you want to ask. And this isn't necessarily the whole list, but you guys can come up with some of your own. But these are some really good ones that I put together for you guys. And there's a reason. You're not just asking questions to ask questions. Again, you're trying to load that gun, right? You're trying to find some information, some pain points that you can potentially expose and make bigger when you're actually doing the sell. So
Now, Ryan, before we talk about these questions, which are very straightforward. There's nothing, nothing like overly complex about these questions. But we talked about having two different angles here. We talked about the possibility of the full-time receptionist answering the phone versus the answering service answering the phone. These questions here, is this the full-time receptionist questions, or are they the uh, reception, or I'm sorry, are they the answering service questions?
gotcha. So here's what I would do. I never did the answering service route, but if I was to do that, I would try to make it as easy and short as possible for the answering service and not necessarily even get into these questions. There might be one or two that you want to, but for the most part, you want them to find out the name, the address, the phone, the source, and then set up that time at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock to call them
Mm-hmm.
back because an answering service, they're never going to probably know as much about your business as you or a trained office manager who's in the
Yeah.
business every day. So as an office manager, for sure, like this is part of their routine, part of their script. As an answering service, I would probably hold off, and then if you're the sales guy, then you would call that person back and then run through some of this stuff so that you can have more of a dialogue and conversation because you're not just looking for like a yes or no and then just leaving it at that. Some of these have follow up questions that again dig into more pain points.
Yeah, basic questions up here. The interesting thing about pain points too is that so many people want to solve the pain points right away. Oh, you've got a let's just say you've got a fixture that's heating up. Let's say someone's calling for maintenance. You've got a fixture that is heating up. Oh, no problem, Mr. Homeowner. We'll take care of that. That's not an issue. Whereas if any sales training will tell you, you want to amplify those pain points during this process. You want to say, oh, that is a big deal. Somebody needs to get out there ASAP and fix that. Oh, there are break-ins in your neighborhood. Wow, this is serious. We really need to figure out how we make our place more secure. Not, oh, that's no problem. You've had some break-ins. We're going to light this up and that problem will be solved. Amplify the pain points. I realize that's a bit off topic, but when you talk about pain points, it's something that people are too quick to create a solution for when they should be amplifying.
I love it, man. I think if anyone wants Ryan to answer their phones this next week, I think you're available, right?
Yeah, I'm busy. I'll have them terrified, as if COVID doesn't have everyone scared enough.
So I'll give you an example. I mean, like tell me a little bit about what you're looking to have done. Of course, you want to find out if they're like, well, we saw our neighbor, they've got some solar lights. We really are interested in those. And that's valuable information. If it's like, hey, have you ever had landscape lighting before? Oh yeah, we have, that's just a yes or no. Maybe that's not the best question because I would dig in after and be like, well, okay, tell me, was it on your house now? Oh, it was on our last house. Oh, okay. Well, why aren't you having the same guy do the lighting at this house? That would be a question that we ask,
Mhm.
and it's like, well, we really like the guy, but we could never get a hold of him. And honestly, the lights were going out all the time. And then again, that's a pain point that you can then be like, wow, that doesn't sound any fun at all. And you can dig in a little bit deeper. And again, these are notes now and ammunition you have going into that sales appointment.
Yeah, and budget. This is another thing that so many people are afraid to talk about. Budgets could be a whole nother conversation, a whole nother webinar. But ask the budget question. We know, right, Ryan? We know they're not going to give an answer. You got to ask it.
Yep. I mean, how many times have you guys ever asked someone what their budget is and they're like, "Oh, 20 grand." You're like, it's just, that's not going to happen. Right. But you need to ask this question, because this is when you're going to want to start to bring up some numbers so that you can bounce it off of them and see how they react, and that's
Yep.
really the point of this. And one that we kind of skipped over is, when are you planning on having lighting installed? I started asking that because sometimes people like will look for like a year, and I've gone out, just rushed out, and they're like, yeah, we want to do this, this, and this, and we're going to do a pool, and then we're going to do a cabana and do the landscaping. I'm like, well, how are we going to design lighting around something that's not here? And so then they call you 3 months later and they're like, here's the plans, and then you go meet with them and you're like, okay, I'm still just looking at plans. And then a year later, when it's done, they've changed everything. The landscape's changed. And then you actually get to your lighting design. So you can waste a lot of time if you're not asking this simple question. If they say, well, we're trying to plan whatever, no problem. We still like to typically meet closer to the date of the project. Is it okay if we can get it on the schedule now, even if it's like literally 9 months from now? Because we've found that people's tastes change, their timelines change, everything else. So we just want to be most efficient with your time.
Yeah. Dead
And
on.
people
Good points.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Good points there.
So once you've asked the budget, then, they're probably going to be like, well, we're just not sure. That's why we want to figure out what it costs, everything else, which leads us to the next step in the framework, which is the company flex. And so this is important. And the very first question here is actually important, how it's phrased. You don't want to just start jumping into it and be like, well, let me tell you a little bit about us. We're the best, yada, yada, yada. I like to ask the question, because then from a psychological standpoint, they're giving you permission to brag about yourself. Okay. And so if again, you can skip this real easy and just start jumping right into the company flex and bragging, or you could just ask the simple question, okay, well, is it okay if I tell you a little bit about our company? And they're always going to say yes. But at least from a power standpoint, you've given it to them. They feel like, yes, I want to hear everything about your company. Right.
That's a really big point, a really big psychological ploy that a lot of the best salespeople use is asking for permission. That most of us don't. We just go right in. But asking for permission, you listen to any Jordan Belfort book, Wolf of Wall Street. Hey, do you have a minute? Do you have a minute for me to talk to you about this idea? And that's what you're doing. You're asking for permission. Now you're just opening them up even more, so they're more receptive to what you have to say.
Yeah. And again, this is one of those things where people will go through this and be like, well, it's just not working quite how I like it. And I go and I listen to their phone calls, they're missing out on asking, and they're, instead of asking questions, they're just telling. So it sounds trivial, but these little nuggets are huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then
All
the
right.
company flex.
Company flex. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about bragging. That's
Yeah.
what we're flexing our muscles here.
So, I mean, I can't really provide the script for you, but I can tell you, this is where you need to brag about how long you've been in business, how many installs you've done, what is the warranty of your products, what is the warranty of your service, your labor. Um, this is your chance, and so some people are, again, a little bit like, well, I'm not that type of person. Well, be that type of person right now. You don't have to brag about how much money's in your bank account, anything like that. You're just simply letting them know, because they need to be sold. And a lot of us are really, we're confident that we have a superior product, a superior business. But if we're not willing and able to brag about it, then no one's going to know about it. So you
Mm-hmm.
kind of got to get over that, spend some time bragging about yourself here, because they are qualifying you. I used to think it was more like, hey, I'm pre-qualifying them because I'm so busy and I'm so cool and like whatever else. But like, no, they're weeding you out right now too. If you're not impressive, then they don't have to meet with you. So you need to make sure that they are like, man, I can't wait to meet this guy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that I think is missed so many times is the understanding that the qualifying goes both ways. They're qualifying you just as much as you are qualifying them. Because you may be the best. They don't know that. In many cases, you may just be a number in a phone book or a number on the internet that they found. So
Absolutely.
hammer home the fact that you are and why you are. This is your time to do it. Get them excited about the visit so that they still don't feel like they have to call other people to visit either before or after you're there. That's all you're trying to do is you're trying to close this door. They've got an open door. You're trying to be the only one who goes into that open door.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, just think about this. If they don't really have real ties to you, if it's even if it was a referral, they look you up and you've got some decent reviews, but they also see these other companies that have more reviews potentially or better ratings. But the conversation goes so well. You answered the phone within 2 rings. The conversation went so well. They feel so comfortable. Why would they waste their time even trying to schedule with these other people who are hard to get a hold of, rude on the phone, whatever else, you know? So this is your chance.
Yep. Yep.
So the fifth step in the framework after you do the company flex is the pricing. So I love talking about pricing because why wait until the very end? And we did the whole webinar on pricing for profits, but so many of us are just afraid to talk about price, even though we know we're the best, we know everything else, but we're just so afraid to ask or to even tell them what the price would be. But the thing is, as you guys know, everyone is going to have sticker shock when it comes to landscape lighting. It's going to happen. Okay.
Mhm.
And so why not just get it over with and then spend the rest of your time in this phone call and in the sales just building value that exceeds the price so that they feel good about it rather than building value and then deliver the price and it just they're like, oh my gosh, that's way more than we thought. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Rip the band-aid right off. Just do it fast.
yeah, so I like to do it by, I mean, obviously you don't know how much their job's going to cost right now. You just got them on the phone, but you can tell them some general numbers and bounce it off of them and see what they say. So um, whatever your minimum is and whatever your average is, this is when you'd want to state that. So, you know, hey, our minimum, just want to tell you real quick about our pricing. Again, this follows the company flex. So it's kind of one and the same. You don't have to ask permission again. It just flows right into it. After you've told them about how great you are, you can tell them our average job. And this is good right after you're telling about how many, you've done over 5,000 installations, 20-year warranty, 2-year labor warranty. Our minimum job starts at 2,500, and an average job is about 8 to 10,000. Does that sound about what you're looking for? Okay. You can ask, does that sound like the type of investment you're looking to make? But either way, you want to throw some numbers out there because some people are like, "Oh my gosh, I thought it was going to be $500." You know, some people might have thought it was going to be 30 grand, and they're like, "Oh, it sounds like a deal." No matter what, you need to throw out a number to gauge them on this.
Ryan, that this is the one area where I think having a second follow-up phone call before setting a physical on-site consultation is beneficial because that then gives the designer time to take a look at the property and maybe give a better estimate for something that's the size of their home based on what they're looking for. Because you're right, you just said something really important that they thought they were going to spend 30, but you said your average job was 8 or 10. Well, in reality, oh shoot, I see that they live on an 8-acre ranch and have a $10 million home. I don't want them thinking that they're going to get what they want for $8 or $10,000. So first thing is first, you're better off throwing out numbers like that than not. But that is an advantage to the second follow-up phone call where the designer is more doing the qualifying, just because there's a little bit more time to get a average price prepared for that particular property.
Yeah. And I have no problem with that. I never did it like that, but I know a lot of guys like to do that. They like to look up the house and everything else. For me, it was just more of a time thing. So if that did happen, let's say more often than not, that's not the case. More often than not, it's like, oh, okay, that yeah. I mean, we were thinking around 5 or 6 grand, but 8 to 10. And if someone says that, that's gold. Write that down so the salesperson knows, okay, they were comfortable. They were thinking 5 or 6, you know. And so if they go into the sale and it's going to be 20,000, they got some work to do, you know. But from our webinar 2 months ago, pricing for profits, part of this part of the process is when you show up to the house and let's say you see, oh wow, we underestimated this one. We told them our average is 8 to 10. This is going to be a 30 or 40K. That's fine because you can actually bring that up to them right away. Hey, how's it going? Introduce yourself. Hey, let's talk about budget. What do you guys want to spend? Oh, we don't know. On the phone, they said about 8 to 10. Well, okay, that sounds good. That is an average job, but as you guys probably know, this is an above average estate. I mean, this is a really awesome property. You guys have this going on for you. I can tell you just by looking at it, this is typically a $50,000 project on similar projects that we've done. Does that sound like something you guys are looking for? And they might go, well, you know, they might go wishy washy, whatever. But at least you threw that number out again so that you're ahead of it when you actually go to do your proposal, and it only comes in at 38,000, and they thought now it was going to be 50. Does that make
And,
sense?
and people love hearing that. They love having their feathers, pumping rainbows into their behind. They love hearing that. So it gets them excited to work with you. Oh yeah, we've spent a lot of money on this house. We love this place. We've spent a ton. That's a $80,000 driveway we just put in. Okay, so it's not going to be a problem putting in the $40,000, $50,000 worth of lights around the entire property.
Yep. No, you're
You can
totally
get
right.
people you can get people bragging about how much money they have spent very quickly, and that gives you just more ammo, more bullets.
Yeah, I had a guy one time. He was bragging. You know, he spent $70,000 on his. I don't even remember what type of material it was. That's how impressed I was. But some type of granite countertops imported from Italy or something like that. So I'm like, okay, if a guy's going to spend 70 grand on his countertops in his outdoor kitchen, it's not going to be that hard to sell him 100 grand in lighting. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah,
wasn't. I mean, he gave me like one objection, and I think I said, "Ah, you'll be fine," and he did it. So, yeah, the more you can get them talking, the better. So,
yeah, exactly. No, we know that if this is the client and this is you, 80% of the conversation needs to go this way. They got to be the ones talking. You got
yep.
to listen. You have to ask poignant questions and shut up and listen, because you're going to take everything that they say, make a mental note, make a physical note, use it as ammunition to close that sale.
So who on the webinar right now are you guys? Who is stating their minimum and their average on this initial phone call? Just go ahead and let me know. I'm kind of interested in that too. If you're stating your minimum and or your average, if you're bringing up pricing on this initial phone call, and then we'll move into the last part of the framework as well. So we got average, yes, no, range, and average. Sometimes do. Look them up on Google. No numbers until after seeing the property. So I hope you guys are open to this idea because it honestly, it's just a small thing to bring up an average. And I know the fear of some people because there's people in my program that have brought that up. Well, I'm just afraid because what if I tell them 8 to 10 and then it ends up being 20? Again, don't worry about these small details because you, for the most part, that's not going to happen. But when it does happen, that's when you get to the property, you tell them, hey, you guys aren't average. You know that.
Yeah.
Look at
Yeah.
this estate. This is awesome.
Yeah. They'll probably be chuckling internally when you say, an average job is 8 to 10 and they're sitting on a $15 million property, and they'll just be kind of laughing. Okay, 8 to 10,000, no problem.
Yeah. So it looks like not a lot of people are. I mean, some people are, but definitely, guys. I like to throw this out because you're going to get some people that just they might even schedule the appointment and then they'll call back like 30 minutes later and say, "Oh yeah," because they don't want to look like they're cheap, right? And they're like, "Oh yeah, no problem." And then they'll call back, 30 minutes later the next day and, "Hey, I talked to my husband. We're going to hold off on landscape lighting or whatever, just kind of so they don't have to feel cheap." But that's fine. It just saved you time
Yeah.
potentially, like a job a bid, even if you're just doing it fast like me, it still takes drive time. It still takes time to meet with them. If they don't agree and close on the spot, you have to follow up. So it's 2 to 3 hours every time you meet with someone. And so if I could save you 3 hours, now all of a sudden you have time to go call on landscape architects that could land at a relationship that will bring in an extra 150 grand a year in lighting. So
Mhm.
this is big time stuff right here, making sure you're
Yep.
doing the pre-qualifying right.
Huge, huge. That's what we want. We want to weed those people out. It's
Yep.
fun. That's what we want.
Okay. And then the last step of the framework is decision makers, which I already know that this is going to be, uh, people are going to be like, nah, I'll do everything but this. I'll start, I'll start telling my minimum and average, but I'm not going to do this part, because this is a little bit awkward, but this again is going to save you a lot of hassle if you'll just ask a couple of questions.
Yeah, this is so key, man. This is so key, and it's just an area where probably 90% of us fall down on. But it's the last, it's the backbone of the framework, your 6-step framework, for a reason, because it is important. And we like to eliminate as many objections as possible. We realize that we're never going to be able to eliminate all of them, and there are a number of objections that we're going to have to overcome. But meeting with both decision makers eliminates the number one objection that people have, is because we know that people will use it as a scapegoat not to buy. The fact that, oh, I have to talk to my husband. Okay, well, he's sitting right there. I'll go to the truck for a minute.
Yeah.
We just eliminated that objection. We need to think about it. Okay, how much time do you two need to think about it? What do we need to think about? Is there something that we want to change here? Let's talk about it together. So this is just the number one objection that we're able to help eliminate or overcome by getting all decision makers to the meeting.
Yeah. I feel like I'm decent at overcoming objections, but honestly, like I do most of it by having a better sales presentation. But as I've, as I've been more convinced that there really is no one better out there than me, and no better product and no better service and no better company, it's easier to overcome someone's objection because you're helping them make the right decision. But at the end of the day, if they're like, hey, well, my husband's not here and I got to talk to him, I don't, how you can overcome that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not that good, like at getting someone to just write me a $20,000 check without talking to their husband.
And we know that they're never going to convey your ideas and your passion as well as you did. That's going to be like, here's a number. Here's what he said. He quoted 20 grand. The husband's like, no, what?
For
No.
lighting. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get a couple $100 worth of solar lights. Um, this is so key. Who, just ask the question. Ask the question. Who else is involved? Oh, my husband. Well, my husband's gonna make the decision, but he's not. He works. He works from 8 to 5. Right?
Yeah. And so
Okay. So
that's
what do we
why,
do?
well, that's why I like to just state it. Cause again, I know like 90% of you on this call or this webinar, you're gonna be like, I ain't doing this part. But just try it, because you want to state, okay, hey, listen, it's important that all decision makers are available at this appointment. Who else will be involved in making that purchase decision? And you might hear something like, well, my husband, but he wants me to get all the bids or whatever. And then you can say, can you make sure they're present for the meeting as well? And they might say what you just said. Well, he works 8 to 5, whatever. A lot of times people don't know that you'll meet at night. They just assume that the appointment can only be between the hours of 8 and 5. And so it just gives you an opportunity to let them know, like, hey, just so you know, we do evening appointments and weekend as well. And they're like, oh, no problem. Like they weren't necessarily trying to only have the appointment with one of them to play the game. They legitimately couldn't meet, right? And so if you let them know that, hey, we do have evening appointments and weekends available, if that makes it easier on your schedule. So that's really the point here, is you want to give yourself the best opportunity to close. And if they're both not there, again, they're not going to relay what took you 1 to 20 years to learn and to convey in this 45-minute appointment. There's just no way they're going to relay that message appropriately. And all they're going to see is the price. They're not going to know the difference between drop-ins and integrated and beam spread and lumens and the pricing and warranties. And there's just no way. So again, people buy an emotion. And if they're not there, they're not going to get emotionally involved. So it's important to stress this, that both are there.
Um, I just lost my train of thought. I'm thinking about Pete's response, and I have a response to what Pete just said. Um, I'm trying to regain my train of thought. Let's talk about what Pete just said. Said that asking for all decision makers kind of rubs him the wrong way. He says if he's made the call, then he's capable of making the decision. Well, great. Then he's all the decision maker that you need.
Yep.
And maybe there's a way, Ryan, maybe the way that it can be phrased like that. Maybe I'm the only decision maker. Fantastic.
No worries. Yeah. Then yeah, when's a good time to meet? So,
Yeah.
um, I think that's fine. I've had that. I even have one experience I can remember. I can't, it's never going to be 100%. They're going to say, well, I am the only decision maker. And then you're going to get there and they're going to be like, I got to talk to my husband. Like it's never going to be perfect. But the point is it's going to be better than where you were before. Because if you bring up the fact that you do nights and weekends, you're now going to have made more appointments at nights and weekends that are going to give you better opportunities. So you're still going to have people that lie to you. You're still going to have people that are uncomfortable with, both decision makers being there because they do want to play the game. They want that out. That's totally fine. That's going to happen. But I do remember an experience where, and again, your office manager, if it's hopefully an office manager taking the notes, is going to put both decision makers will be there, or she is the only decision maker, right? So when you get there and you do the sale and they're like, well, I got to talk to my husband. I've brought it up. It's awkward as hell, but you got to bring it up. Listen, I understand that you said that, but when we scheduled the appointment, we just wanted to verify that everyone was there. And you said you were the only decision maker.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I know, but I talked to my husband. Okay, no worries. Is there any way you could give him a call and go over with it, just so that way while I'm here, we can make any changes if necessary? And she called him and we had about a 15-minute phone call. Like, I mean, I was in her kitchen and she was on the phone with him on speaker, and we closed the deal. Like, he was fine. She really was the decision maker, but just because she's a decision maker, I mean, it's still a joint decision. You know what I mean? But he trusted that if she felt good with me, with the design, everything else, and the price, that she was the decision maker. So I think there's a few different ways you can handle it, but at some point, you're just helping hold people accountable. And if you don't want to make it awkward, that's fine. But I promise you, just by asking like about this, you'll be in at least half, about 50% of your people will be in a better opportunity to close because they'll both be
Yep.
there. And the ones who are awkward, then fine, let it go. Don't make it awkward.
Yep. Exactly. What I was thinking was that you reminded me offering evening visits and weekend visits and things like that. And that's what I wanted to discuss. And that's why I'm a big fan as a business owner myself. I want to spend my evenings, I want to spend my weekends with my family. Now, granted, that's why I'm not a contractor. It's why I'm in distribution. We understand that if you're a lighting contractor, somebody on your team is going to be out at night. But that somebody doesn't have to be you. So that could be another excuse for you to take the plunge and hire that salesperson. And the salesperson needs to know that you're working evenings. You're going to see people in the evening, not only to make adjustments, but also to do sales calls, because that's when we know both decision makers are going to be home.
Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I love growing a business because then if you don't want to ask these awkward questions, you don't have to. You have an office manager to do it. And if you don't want to be a closer, you don't have to. You have a salesperson that can do it. So um, that's just part of it. And some people are like, well, they want to work 8 to 5. Probably don't do a landscape lighting business. I enjoyed it because I'm a night guy. And so, make your day about spending time with your family. Take your kids to school, pick them up from school, go spend some time with them from 3 to 5. So there's ways to make it work, of course. And most of you are on here have figured that out. But again, I don't want to, I would try to like everything I could to not work weekends. But again, if a guy traveled Monday through Friday, then I'd go meet him on a Saturday. But for the most part, I'd rather meet at someone's house at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday than go meet them anytime on Saturday, because that Saturday, Sunday were my family days. So
Yeah. Well, we know business ownership. You ain't working 8 to 5. Like it ain't an 8 to 5 gig.
and here's what we're going to do for you guys that are live with us right now. We're going to email you scripts that will help you overcome this objection if they're like, if it starts to get awkward. So there's a couple things you can say that just kind of help justify it, and help ask for it again. I'm a big fan for trying to close whatever. Right now, we're just trying to close this phone call, but when you're closing a sale, if you don't have a couple of objection scripts written out, I highly recommend doing it, because sometimes it's not as hard as you think. Sometimes it's just keeping the conversation going. And so if, again, we'll just email you these scripts, and they're really helpful. They'll make it so it's less uh, combative, I guess. It's just kind of explaining why you're doing it and giving them some options and helping close this phone call to make sure you're setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, we're never going to close a sale by being combative. We never are. We just have to find a way around to justify what we're asking for.
Right. Yeah, and right now we're just asking to if both decision makers can be there, and like Pete was saying, like if he's like, well, no, I'm capable of making the decision. Okay, no worries. Well, when would be best for you? We've got appointments next Tuesday and next Thursday. What would be best
I
for you?
don't think this is on the script, but hell, you can make a joke out of it too. Yeah, we just want to make sure all decision makers on site, you, your husband, your kids, your dog, we don't care. Whoever has say in the decision, we want to talk to them because we want to make sure that everybody has equal say. So yeah, we'll send over some of those scripts and some of those objections to overcome.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, that's the end of the framework. Our last topic here is really just a couple of things that tie all this together. Some important things to remember when it comes to qualifying.
Oh, practice. Holy cow. Practice. Uh, Once you write out these scripts, writing it out isn't enough. Everybody needs to practice. We have to practice overcoming objections. We have to practice our company flex. We have to practice the order of this thing. Don't think just because you write it out, it means you're done. Write it out, practice with the entire staff. Do it over and over and over again. Do it weekly, monthly, whatever you have to do to make sure that these conversations flow perfectly. That's what we want, is we want nice flow. Paul, Paul, I've seen that before, buddy. That's why you're my hero. He says, Paul says he put a picture of the homeowners' pets. Like whenever he can, he'll put a picture of the homeowners' pets in the proposal, and they love it. Like they eat that up, and it's ingenious.
Okay, so yeah, I'm sold. I'll change the scripts around to include the dog thing, because it's true. If you involve the family pet, it actually doesn't matter about this framework or anything else. You've pretty much got it done. So thanks, Paul. Thanks, Pete.
And
Yeah.
then Ryan, delegation. You hit on this. You did a really good job of hitting on this the other day. It says you're not the best. You're not the best at everything.
No, I mean, we all think we are. We think we're so good, and like, hey, I'm the owner. Like, people, like, they're so glad to see me because I'm the owner and I'm so good. I'm gonna do the sale. I'll be there for the install. I'll answer the phone. Like, I'm so good. But like, honestly, you're just not. So that's why I put sorry, not sorry. Uh, you probably are really good at a lot of different things, but you really just can't be the best at everything. And if you are the best at answering the phone, then you can be the phone guy or the phone gal, but you can't be in a sales appointment and answer the phone at the same time. Okay, I've seen it, and it's terrible. It's not good. You can't be out doing an install and be hanging in a tree and answer the phone and give a sales. You just can't. So delegation is going to be key here. And again, I hope you guys will understand the value. I feel like I'm like trying to sell someone on an office manager that I've got right here, like, hey, or hire this person, and it's not that, but it will really help grow your business, because now you have an office manager doing office manager duties, and you have a salesperson doing salesperson activities, and an installer doing installation activities. So when you start doing things like that, that's when your business starts running on all cylinders. You start to experience extreme momentum, and that's when you become the best. And people appreciate that when, like, again, I used to think people wanted to talk to the owner, and they would tell me, well, now are you gonna be here on the install? I'm like, you don't want me here for the install. I'm the worst installer out there. I've got highly trained guys that have been doing this for years. This is all they do every single day. That's who you want here. So there's a way to make sure that people understand that they are getting the better experience without you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Delegation, huge key to scaling this business and getting ourselves out of this daily rat race and running ourselves into the ground and being inefficient. Yeah, we just hit 3 o'clock. Your little the pro tip here. I love create an email series that gets people excited about the upcoming appointment. Um, Videos, portfolio galleries, just a little drip campaign after they've called in. It's another good reason to get their email. You're going to send them a series of videos, something to expect when the salesman or when the consultant shows up to their property. Anything you want to add to that, Ryan?
No, not really. I mean, it's just a great way to start to build a relationship with someone before you get there. So, um, you guys can be as creative as you want, but if as simple as a couple emails explaining what's going to happen at the design appointment, or how long lighting takes to install, or how much it costs on average, those are some sample topics, but just something so that you can start to build that relationship with them.
Um, so as we wrap up, just a couple of questions lying out here. What would the topics be for the email series from Fitz? Next topic we're going to talk about is technology. And I believe we're bringing a CRM company on to help us with that conversation. And it really flows with today's conversation because a lot of that will tie back into how the initial phone call is answered, where the information is put. And I know so many of you are either not utilizing a CRM or not utilizing your CRM to its full potential. So we're going to talk about that and other technologies that can really help us boost efficiency and boost our profits. So that's next. Fitz, as we mentioned at the beginning of the series, beginning of this call, we have about 20 topics already picked out, which we will discuss closer to the time we release it. But if you have any recommendations or if there's anything you'd like to talk about, please send that our way.
Pete had a question. Do you have samples of these email series that we could tweak? Yeah, you just have to join my program, Pete. Sorry. But no, I mean, like I said, some of the topics, by the way, if you do join the program, I mean, I give you the detailed scripts. We talk about building videos, everything else. But, like I said, you want to talk about anything that will build value. So think about what questions that your typical clients have in your area. So you could do a frequently asked questions. Like I said, how long does lighting take to install? How big of a mess are you going to make in my backyard? Whatever questions, like I said, your clients have, make those emails about it so that they can start to go, wow, these guys are better. Like when you start to do that, no one else is doing that, right? And so whether it's their window guy, roofer, whatever it is, like no one's doing that. So they're going to start to build a relationship with you. When you show up there, you're already that much further ahead than anybody else. Yeah, easy
Yeah,
installments of
Steve.
1995. Yeah, I'll send the link.
Travis asked, what other office tasks do you have for an office manager? I know Pete just weighed in on this. Pete said marketing is huge for his office manager. How about you, Ryan? What else did the office manager do? I mean, the list of things the office manager can do is limitless. Talk about marketing, social media, bookkeeping. Can you get somebody who's also good at bookkeeping? Ultimately, you want to get to the point where the office manager isn't doing anything but answering phone calls and setting appointments and qualifying people. But we realize a lot of us are getting started or don't have that type of work. So yeah, marketing, social media, bookkeeping are certainly easy things. Any other thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, those are great to start with. You'll find that there's a lot more. The thing is, you guys don't realize you're doing the work of like an army right now. You're doing the work of like 5, 6 people. You just don't realize it. And what happens is you'll be like, oh, I'm going to assign them to answer the phone and then do this. And then you kind of think, well, that's it. But then you realize, oh, yeah, now I have this. What we should be doing this. So they can do send out maintenance renewals. If you're doing a maintenance service, if you don't have one, they can help you come up with one. They can help out with special projects. So if you're like, hey, I need a CRM, we're talking about that next month. You don't have time because you're doing the job of 5, 6 people. They can research the top 3 or 4 and narrow it down to 1 or 2. do a couple demos, and they can be your right hand man. They can help with ordering. I mean, I had my office manager doing ordering materials. I had her doing the as we'd order materials in, she would stage the jobs for the guys in the morning so that they didn't have to pick them out because they were getting the job and they'd be like, oh crap, we don't have two downlights, whatever. So it just helps to make sure you're efficient with stuff like that. So I do have a huge list. I don't have it here in front of me of office manager duties. And she got so busy where her phone calls were like, she was answering the phone so much that she couldn't do these things. So then we hired a dedicated receptionist, and her full-time job was just to be receptionist, you know? And then what was nice about that is if one of them calls in sick, you've got someone to fill in for someone. If someone's behind, you know, if my office manager is behind with something, she can call on the receptionist to help her out. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do to keep someone busy beyond just answering the phone.
Yeah, and one quick note, I have a staff of 8 right now. I would think most people on this call, obviously a couple exceptions, but most people's staff's probably around 2 or 3 people. I went through a list of positions that I feel like I need help with. I came up with 12 more positions. Like there is no amount. There are so many areas where I could take somebody, take the right person, and automatically monetize their time.
Yeah.
In business, you're either growing or you're dying, and we need to make sure that we have the right people who help us grow. Trust me, you will find something for them to do. They won't be sitting on their hands. And Fitz just asked, when do we introduce nighttime demos? We're going to talk about customer experience, I think, in the next couple of months, and obviously a nighttime demo would hammer in, would align with the customer experience conversation. So, yeah, we will get to that.
Here's some more: monthly email newsletter. I mean, I don't know how many people are doing that. Facebook posts, payroll, bookkeeping, invoicing, paying the bills, maintain your office upkeep, maintain your databases, monthly maintenance, signups, renewals, scheduling service calls, schedule your annual maintenance, schedule designer sales appointments, schedule and maintain your install calendar, uh, customer care and follow up. So if they're sitting around, why not call some clients and be like, hey, just wanted to make sure everything's still good. It's been 30 days. We want to check on you. I mean, who's doing that? No one's doing that, right? So those types of things lead to new opportunities, not just as a repeat client, like, hey, actually, yeah, we're ready to do our backyard now. But hey, yeah, now they're going to be that much more likely to refer you to their neighbors, you know? So again, order materials, receive deliveries, prep and stage jobs, assist with proposals if you're busy and you need them to type stuff up for you, whatever it is. So there's a lot of stuff that will keep them busy more than 40 hours a week.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. All right, Ryan, we really appreciate the time, man. Killer job. People, make sure you reach out to Ryan if you haven't already. He has a phenomenal program where he actually holds you accountable for sales and growth. Whereas, you know, you ask me and I just give you free advice and you guys forget about it 20 minutes later. Ryan will make sure that you are holding everything accountable. We really appreciate you guys being a part of this, and we're looking forward to certainly keeping this going through 2021 and hopefully beyond, because we just love talking to you guys. Really, your insight and your questions are invaluable to what we do, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, we really do, guys. Thanks for attending live. We really appreciate that. And if you guys, here's our contact info. Most of you guys have it, but if you guys do have any questions about today's topic or you need anything, reach out to either one of us. We're highly available. And then, like Ryan said earlier, if you guys have like something you're just dying to learn about or you want to discuss, let us know. But we're looking forward to doing this. This is a lot of fun for us to come up with different topics and have these discussions. So really appreciate you guys jumping on.
We'll talk soon, everybody. Thanks again.
All right, guys, take it easy. Have a great week.